The 6-step forecasting process explained. Turning data into predictions. Ever wondered how companies seem to know exactly what you'll want next season? Or how grocery stores never run out of your favorited snacks? It's all thanks to forecasting. Businesses use data and patterns to make informed guesses about the future. But how do they do it? Here we break down the step-by-step process of turning raw data into accurate predictions. Step 1. Identify the purpose of the forecast. Before going into numbers and charts, businesses need to answer one big question. Why are we forecasting? Different forecasts serve different purposes. A company predicting next month's sales needs a different approach than one forecasting industry trends for the next 5 years. Example, a fashion retailer forecasting demand for winter coats will use past sales data and weather trends. Meanwhile, an airline forecasting fuel costs will study oil price fluctuations. Psychological effect, anchoring bias. People tend to rely too heavily on the first piece of information they receive. If a company assumes that demand will always follow last year's pattern, they might miss new market trends. Key lesson: clearly define what you want to predict before collecting data. Step 2. Collect relevant data. Good forecasts depend on good data. Businesses gather both historical and current data to make their predictions more reliable. Data can be internal, sales records, website traffic, production reports. External, market trends, competitor analysis, economic indicators. Example, a coffee shop tracking its busiest hours uses its own sales records, internal data, while also checking weather forecasts to see how rain impacts foot traffic. Psychological effect, confirmation bias. People tend to favor information that supports their beliefs while ignoring contradictory evidence. If a business only looks at past success and ignores warning signs, it might make over-optimistic forecasts. Key lesson: gather a variety of data sources to avoid biased predictions. Step 3. Choose a forecasting method. There are 2 main types of forecasting methods. Qualitative forecasting uses expert opinions and market research when historical data is limited. Quantitative forecasting uses mathematical models, statistics, and past data for precise predictions. Example, a new tech startup with no past sales data may rely on expert opinions, qualitative. Meanwhile, a grocery store with years of sales history can use statistical models, quantitative. Psychological effect, overconfidence bias. Companies sometimes overestimate the accuracy of their chosen method, assuming it will always work. Key lesson: the best forecasts often combine both qualitative and quantitative methods for a balanced approach. Step 4. Analyze the data and make predictions. Now it's time to turn raw data into insights. Businesses look for trends, patterns, and relationships to make an informed prediction. Example, an e-commerce company analyzing past Black Friday sales may notice that discounts on electronics always lead to a spike in website traffic. They can use this insight to prepare their inventory accordingly. Psychological effect, the illusion of control. People often believe they can predict or control outcomes more than they actually can. Even with strong data, unexpected events, like a sudden competitor discount, can throw off forecasts. Key lesson: even well-analyzed data can't predict everything, so always allow room for uncertainty. Step 5. Interpret and validate the forecast. Once a prediction is made, businesses must check if it makes sense and test its reliability. This step helps avoid costly mistakes. Example, a restaurant forecast high demand for a new menu item, but before ordering large supplies, they run a small test launch to see if customers actually like it. Psychological effect, hindsight bias. After an event happens, people often believe they knew it all along. If a forecast fails, it's easy to assume the mistake was obvious, but recognizing potential errors beforehand is key. Key lesson: always test forecasts against real-world conditions before fully committing. Step 6. Monitor and update the forecast. Forecasting is an ongoing process. As new information comes in, businesses must adjust their predictions. Example, a travel agency predicts high summer bookings, but if an unexpected economic downturn occurs, they must revise their forecast to prevent overbooking flights and hotels. Psychological effect, the planning fallacy. People tend to be overly optimistic about their timelines and predictions. Businesses often underestimate how much things can change over time. Key lesson: forecasts should be regularly reviewed and updated to reflect new data and trends. Why forecasting matters in business. It helps companies prepare for future demand and avoid shortages or surpluses. A improves budgeting and resource planning. A supports better decision-making for marketing, inventory, and hiring. A reduces risks by preparing for different possible outcomes.